I'm Lady C, back at you with Hidden Struggles. And in this final conversation in my 3-part series with Daria, former Jehovah's Witness and a good friend of mine, whose courage to leave changed her life in more ways than one. I want to just remind everyone that this is Hidden Struggles. It's a safe space for honest personal stories. So each guest's experience is their own journey and lived reality. So make sure you listen with respect. And even if your path look different, be mindful of other people's stories. In this final part, she's sharing her most personal chapter yet. From surviving breast cancer to why leaving the organization may have saved her life.
I'll use my personal example as a breast cancer survivor. When I got sick, had long since not been a Jehovah's Witness. I was done. So to me, that is a blessing because it changed the way I navigated my health and my treatment. And right now, Kathy, I do a lot of peer support and advocacy, and I help women who are diagnosed and give them support, telling them what questions to ask, how to navigate it, and all of it. That's a big, huge passion of mine in a way that I give back based on the fact that I'm 6 years cancer free, right? And there are Jehovah's Witness women that I help, that I support, and they thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I respect their boundaries, but they're asking me what questions to ask and how to do that. So having that realization, knowing what I know, led to all of the other work that I do, the policy work, me choosing to go back to graduate school to get my master's in public health because I want to make a difference. I want to tackle those inequities and disparities. I want to educate these vulnerable communities and vulnerable populations who have alarming higher morbidity or mortality rates, right? I want to help change that narrative. And it starts with education and changing health behaviors to get improved outcomes. And whether people want to acknowledge it or not, there are social determinants of health: where you live, your environment, how you grew up, your employment, your race, your position in life, your economic status. All of these factors affect your health outcomes.
Can we just go back to the employment part? Because I want to just, bridge that gap with Watchtower.
Yes.
When you said employment, if Jehovah's Witnesses are not, taught to really seek out good jobs, they're not going to get health insurance that's going to help them in that arena. You want to speak to that for us?
Absolutely. When you talk about being a Jehovah's Witness and you've been told to keep it simple, don't go to school, focus on the kingdom, focus on the full-time ministry, and you don't have the employment and you get sick and you need health insurance, what are you going to do? So there's a whole component in the cancer advocacy space where we focus on financial toxicity and the cost of getting sick and the cost and the burdens that cancer can bring. And so that's another domino effect of this religion. I can think of different videos that we've watched where the young person, they get a job, they're sitting there and the person pulls up in a fancy car and they give you this narrative that it's all about materialism. But that's not what it is. It is about being self-sufficient, being able to take care of yourself, have what you need to survive in society. And so coming up out of this religion, if I was someone who still subscribed to the Watchtower doctrine and the belief system and the narrative that they put out there, I never would have been able to become an advocate, to have conversations about policy, to go to the state capitol in the state that I live in, to go to Capitol Hill in DC. I've done that 4 times now. 3 times in person, 1 time virtually, and I've been to my state capital to advocate for policy that helps people and will help the average Jehovah's Witness who needs these benefits. And if I was a Jehovah's Witness, I wouldn't be doing it because what? It's not being neutral or it's being political. See, there's so
Yeah.
many holes in this. And because when I came up, I'm thankful that I came up out of it when I did. The thought of getting breast cancer and being a Jehovah's Witness is horrific to me.
Did you ever experience the blood issue?
No, what I experienced with the blood issue, first of all, again, I was never going to be a good Jehovah's Witness because I would have taken blood. Come on. And what happened to me when I was sick, and I was in active treatment for about 2.5 years. Active treatment meaning I had surgeries to remove my tumor, other surgeries. I caught an infection, reconstruction surgeries, port removal, port placement, port removal, so many different surgeries. Then a 1.5 years of solid treatment, whether that was chemotherapy or radiation, and all of the side effects. And now I'm in survivorship mode, and the long-term effects of my treatment, I'm experiencing just some of those things, but I'm healthy and I'm cancer-free. But
Congratulations on that. That's good.
Thank you. But what I'm so thankful. But what I found most interesting when I was in active treatment, when I first went into active treatment and I met with my doctors and you fill out your durable power of attorney, I wrote on there specifically that I will take a blood transfusion, and these were the people that would be in charge of my care if I couldn't speak for myself. And it was family members that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses that I knew would speak up and advocate for me and say, yes, give her a blood transfusion. So there's that. Then every surgery I had, you do pre-op and you talk to the people in advance. And even when you're on the table before you go through anesthesia, you talk to the anesthesiologist, and at every single turn, they would say to me, do you want a blood transfusion? And I would say yes. And listen, for whatever reason, my parents wouldn't be around, my support system, whether it was my mom or my dad, they weren't around, or it would be some family member who wasn't a witness. And I would say, listen, let's go ahead and have this conversation before my parents come back in the room. They're Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. Should something happen, yes, without hesitation, I want a blood transfusion. And they would say, okay, no problem. Write it down and keep going. So fortunately, that would not have been my experience because I had my I's dotted and my T's crossed in terms of documentation about what I wanted to happen in the event that something, God forbid, would have gone wrong. But again, think about the people in these situations who are Jehovah's Witnesses who know full well that they want a blood transfusion, but they're afraid to speak up. And all of this because of a misinterpretation of scripture. It's infuriating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm studying public health and I have a doctor in my family, you should hear the stories. You should hear the stories and the research and the articles that are written. And what I know to be true is that more often than not, you have these Jehovah's Witnesses who are in the hospital and they look, you need a blood transfusion, and you got family members around pressuring them. And the minute those people go home, okay, you can give me a blood transfusion, just don't tell my family. Do you know how often that happens?
I heard we got a letter from a doctor out west that told us about that in the operating room. After their family leaves, they're begging them for blood. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it happens. It happens all the time. So once again, another tenet of their faith, another tent pole of their faith is shaky.
Mm-hmm.
And people aren't sticking to it. Just like I said, I don't believe that there are this many people walking around that are neutral. I don't. In certain communities, especially. Now, in other populations, yeah, these people are walking around not voting, and they should be. And again, like I said, the abuse that I know about, physical and otherwise, and all of the people who are unfaithful in their marriages, all of the things, the standards and what these people have said is the way that you should live and be, and all these rules and all these man-made rules and everything, nobody can Nobody can maintain that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And then when you get into, like I said, the blood issue, I've seen other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who have said that's what woke them up. Listen, if one of my children, something happens, I'm going to give them blood.
To me, you're not only a survivor, but you're thriving because you're helping other people. So
Mhm.
when you look back, at what point did you realize that you were going to cross over to the other side and not only, share your experience, but then advocate? At what point did you realize that that was going to be your role, or what made you want to do that?
When I started researching my subtype, the type of breast cancer that I had, me, I learned, and there's research and data to support it, that my particular subtype of breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer, is more common in Black and brown women. If people in any situation, no matter where you're from, when people know better, they do better. So if you are given the resources and the tools to make good choices for yourself, more often than not, humans are going to do that. So if I, as someone who has an elevated understanding of the illness that I have battled, right? And thank God I haven't had a recurrence and I'm doing well 6 years out. If I am someone who can inform and talk to other people about preventative measures, and even once they have this diagnosis, should that happen, things that they can do to help improve their chances, why wouldn't I share that? Why wouldn't I do that without hesitation? And then you mentioned thriving. A lot of it is because I lost so much time. I want to live a full life and do the things that I enjoy. And one of the things that give me joy is supporting the community and giving back. I want to see people win. I want to see everybody win.
That's what that principal saw in you when you were in school. That
Mm-hmm.
principal saw you as that leader that you're talking about right now, that person
Mm-hmm.
that's looking to help other people. And another thing I want to bring out about this is, what do you think about stress and how that
Mm.
affects you? Because when you think about stress and your health, and you also compare that to being one of Jehovah's Witnesses and how they're, holding people down, not allowing people to get, opportunities, and especially people that can, you know, you can get out, you can break the cycle. So how would you relate, or, put all that together, the stress, being a Jehovah's Witness, and all of that?
Well, there's so many intersections there, right? There's so many intersections and there's so many correlations. But the way that I answer that is, I see a lot of women. I'm going to focus on women now who are Jehovah's Witnesses, and they just are unhappy. You can see it. You can see the pressure weighing on them heavily. And I think about sisters that I knew back when I was a witness that were depressed, and I remember, or stressed about something. And the solution was always go out and field service more, increase your time in the ministry. And it wasn't helping. They were still just as depressed. Some of them were taking different medications and things like that. So I think that this religion is a burden and it contributes to stress, it increases stress. I do, particularly for people who are really trying to be by the book and be these good Jehovah's Witnesses. They're on this hamster wheel and they're going after something that they're never going to be able to achieve because it's not realistic, it's not sustainable. So, all of that adds to your stressors, and stress contributes to poor health. There's again, there's research and data to support that. We know this, right? And so I think that you said something earlier about how a person could be a Jehovah's Witness and still do some of the things in life that they want to do. And I agree with you. And we're not monolithic, and every Jehovah's Witness experience is not the same. But every now and then you run across a person who is a Jehovah's Witness. And I remember having conversations about this person or about that person or with that person. And they would say to you, yeah, well, I'm going to do it like this. This is what works for me. And I would go, oh, or well, my child's going to college. They're going to do this. Or, yeah, okay, no, I don't go out in field service every week. I don't care. There were people who did that, right? And when you think about it, those people had less stress. They had less stress. The people in Watchtower who are trying to achieve every marker, every goalpost that these governing nobodies has set up, right, are the most miserable people because it's unattainable and it is not realistic. And they are the ones that are the most unhappy and have the most stress. And so I think that if people watching this have questions or doubt, if you sneak in and looking, ask yourself, what am I doing? Is this in the Bible? Because that's what this is about, right? For you, that's what it's about. So, is this in the Bible? First of all, ask yourself that. And then ask yourself, what am I doing? Does this matter? It's like, who has to write down the number of hours that they spend talking about their God? Why did we think that this is what we were supposed to do? And so start asking yourself those questions. And then you don't have to talk about it and announce it with everybody. Just move in silence. Do what works for you and your relationship with your God.
That's true. Because, I was going to talk to you about that when you were talking about how when you were waking up and how you hadn't been to the meeting in 3 months. And then you were talking about how you just told your family that you were exhausted, you were tired. And so I think that as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were taught to tell too much of our business. We were taught to self-report. We were taught that we didn't have privacy.
That's
We had to
right.
tell everything about everything we did to the point where if somebody made a mistake on somebody said something about they drank too much one time and they went to go turn themselves into the elders. If you're at your house and you have one too many beers, that's your business. You don't have to report everything you do to these men.
No, you don't. And you're 100% correct. And further to that, why are you giving men all of this power and agency over you? That's why I said ask yourself, what am I doing? And sit with that. All of these things are interconnected. And so you talk about stress, you're never going to be able to live up to some other human being's standards. Ever. Ever.
We make mistakes every day as humans. And the sad thing about it is, like you said, people can't that you people cannot do everything perfect. And
That's
that's
right.
where that stress comes from
That's
because
right.
Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe that you are human. Because
No, they don't.
if you go to the brothers and you tell them you made a mistake, I've had people tell us they made one too many mistakes, got disfellowship for something that was just so stupid, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember JT was talking about this experience a long time ago about these kids got in trouble. And I don't know if it was an experience that he heard or it was somebody's giving an analogy, but the whole thing was there was three guys. One was a Jehovah's Witness, and the other two were just worldly kids in his class. And they got in trouble. And the two kids that were not Jehovah's Witnesses, they just got on a 2-week punishment. But the Jehovah's Witness ended up getting disfellowship, and they met up at a class reunion, and they went on about their lives or something. I guess the guy had left the religion, later on, and he had been gone for 20 years and was not able to speak to his parents for the last 20 years over what happened. And these other two kids just got a 2-week punishment, moved on with their lives. And the Jehovah's Witness was still suffering from the event that took place that really didn't even amount to nothing. I think it dealt with drinking. But
That's
it was
terrible.
just a crazy thing about something that they did as kids that
Mhm.
now, teenagers, that 20 years later, the witness was still suffering and paying for the mistake 20 years later.
Yeah, it's just such a flawed organization and a flawed belief system that is not rooted in anything loving or
Hmm.
godly. It's just not. And that's terrible. That's terrible. And that's what we mean when we're talking about stress and the weight and the anxiety and the burden and the bondage, the prison that this belief system puts you in.
Hmm.
And so many people want to break free of it. So many people have talents and gifts and creativity and thoughts and skills that they are not harnessing, that are just getting wasted away. And it can happen at any age. If you wake up at 80, go for it. That's
I
how I
agree.
feel. That's
I
how I
agree.
feel. And
Yes.
that to me is going to break you free of that stress and anxiety. Go for it. I am not taking my foot off the gas. I have a lot that I want to accomplish. A lot that I'm working on right now. I got one more year on this graduate degree, and I'll have my master's in public health, and we'll see where it takes me. Rather, it's, I have a focus on community engagement, health behavior, health equity, and I also care about environmental health. I also care about policy. And so that has allowed me to do the advocacy work and be on Capitol Hill and be at the state capitol in Michigan to advocate for lower prescription drug costs. Or um, it didn't work, but I still believe our voices were heard in DC about Medicaid and no more cuts to cancer research at the National Institute of Health, at the NIH. I'll continue to take part in those activities and learn more about policy. And I just remain open in terms of what will come at me professionally. But again, what happens a lot of times is because you are open and you're willing to put yourself out there, you network and you meet people and the opportunities come to you. But
Yeah.
again, that's why I said you got to be open, willing to unlearn, willing to learn, and to let go of that judgmental way and mindset that is so intrinsic with Jehovah's Witnesses.
And you see how you're using your voice to do what you enjoy, and also, helping to educate people about something that you personally have gone through. And I
That's
think
right.
that's a really good thing, because you're not just limited to telling people to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses so they can sit in this kingdom hall and not have any goals or any future aspirations to do anything but
Whew.
recruit for the Watchtower. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
I think that your religion should be a part of your life. I don't think it should be your life. And
I
I think that
agree.
as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, that's what it was. It was like a one size fits all, and
Hmm.
there was no variety, And so I think that the Watchtower could have still been a good organization if they would have allowed that people could do different things. Because I think people want to come together and be a community. Years ago, my grandparents talked about how that was how Black people survived back in the day, was
Hmm.
through their church. But I will tell you one thing, because the Watchtower doesn't really have anything to offer, they had to be who they are. Because if you bring people together and your only message is the world is going to come to an end, you're not really teaching people how to have community anyway. Because the
That's right.
Watchtower, they don't have soup kitchens, they don't get involved in the community to do anything. So at the end of the day, why are we coming here in the first place? If you know what I'm saying, you have
Oh my
nothing
goodness.
to give, you know?
You are saying so much, and I so agree with you. Watchtower doesn't have anything to offer. They,
Mhm.
like you said, they don't do what churches historically do and what the foundation of church is. They don't do that. They don't give to charity. In fact, they take
Mhm.
it, but they don't give to charity. They don't support. They don't do anything. They don't even help their own members. all the money that members have given for their kingdom halls, for their buildings, when they sell those kingdom halls, where does that money go? Who gets that
Straight back.
money?
We know it goes straight back into the coffers of the Watchtower.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. When Jared Kushner bought all of those buildings in Brooklyn for over $300 million, and in total, what did they make on all of those properties? Wasn't it close to $1 billion or something like that?
Something like that.
Where is
Yeah.
that money when you have members of Watchtower who are stressed out because they don't have health insurance, stressed out because they can't pay their bills and make ends meet, stressed out because they can't make a living wage to buy food for their families?
That's true.
Where are those millions upon millions upon millions of dollars? How much do they have in real estate holdings all over the world? And all I can say is the best way that you can prove Watchtower wrong is by the choices you make when you leave. But the way that you continue to prove them wrong is by coming up out of this, being consistent, being honest, unlearning, like I said, learning, being open to different thoughts and perspectives. That's what makes the world a beautiful place. I wouldn't want to be around someone that thought exactly like me all the time. I need to hear a different perspective. I need to be in a situation where I don't have all the answers. I don't even want all the answers. Life to me is a journey of discovery.
And Daria, I thank you profusely for coming on Hidden Struggles, because I save this space for people that are leaving the religion to see what they can do after leaving, people who are waking up, people who are trying to make decisions and trying to make sense out of what's happening in their lives or what has happened. I invite anyone to my platform to talk and share their own personal struggles. Everybody has them. Everybody has different struggles. And Daria, definitely, you really covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate you being a guest on my show. Do you have any further thoughts that you would like to say in closing to the audience?
I just would like to say, don't be afraid to do your research and to ask questions. Go on a journey of self-discovery. Find out who you are, what you like, what you want to believe, how you want to show up in the world. And don't allow this religion who has given you this narrative that it's either that or nothing. Don't fall for that. I beat cancer after I left Watchtower. And one could say, oh, she got cancer, whatever, whatever. So now she's, the prodigal daughter. She's going to come back to Jehovah. Never was going to happen. Thought never crossed my mind. So allow yourself to have those questions and allow yourself to research and figure this out and know and trust yourself. Trust yourself that you can make it on the other side.
Thank you so much for that information. This has been Lady C. Daria, again, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And we'll see you all on the next episode. All right, so that concludes the final discussion with Daria in this 3-part segment. And I really hope that you enjoyed hearing her experiences. For anyone that has missed the other 2 parts, I'll make sure that I put links to those video episodes in the description. In the meantime, I would love to know your feedback about Daria's story. I'm sure many people may be able to resonate with what she said, and I would love it if you would be interested in sharing your story on my platform. Please reach out to me, and you can learn more about how to reach me in the description. This has been Lady C. I want to thank you so much for taking this journey, and I'll see you on future episodes.